Hello, my name is Robbie. I'm go by the pronouns he, him. We are here tonight to start creating a world and some characters so that we can play the game My Life with Master by Paul Czege. I am joined by three members of the Gauntlet who are with me tonight. And so we're just going to do a quick little introduction of who the players are. And then we're going to get into the concept, aim, tone, subject matter of the game and kind of proceed to get into some creation. So I'm just going to read left to right across my computer screen. So Pearl, if you want to go first.
Hello, I'm Pearl. I use she, her pronouns. I consider myself relatively new to the Gauntlet, but at some point I'm going to have to stop saying that because it's been a while. And I'm happy and slightly nervous about this really interesting, if slightly gruesome sounding game. Yay!
Okay. Stentor.
Hi, I'm Stentor Danielson, they, them. I guess I'm becoming a more experienced gauntleteer. I'm coming up on my first anniversary sometime soon, I think. I'd have to double check. And yeah, I've been hearing about this game since I first got into RPGs like 8 or 9 years ago, and I'm excited to get a chance to actually play it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually coming up on my first anniversary with the Gauntlet as well. It was last summer that I first got into playing games with the Gauntlet. Walter?
Hey, I'm Walter. I've also been playing games with the Gauntlet for a while now. He, him are my pronouns. And I am super excited. I have also wanted to play this game for a while. So thanks for running this, Robbie.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah, I mean, this is like a game when if you're kind of interested in independent role-playing games, I think, if you start kind of studying them, that My Life with Master is, I think, definitely a game that comes up. I would just say at the beginning that the book, at least right now, is not in print. I think sometimes you can find it on eBay if you want a print copy. But it tends to be, I think, fairly expensive. But you can also get it from Half Meme Press. That's HALFMEME Press, which is, and you can get a PDF copy. I think for about like $10, you can get the PDF copy of the game. I'm going to go on and start with the concept, aim, tone, subject matter of the game, and we'll talk a little bit about safety. So the concept of the game, it has a subtitle, and I think that helps you to kind of get some sense of what the concept is. It says it's a role-playing game of villainy, self-loathing, and unrequited love. And it was published in 2003. And I think the concept of the game is to put the players into the shoes of various characters who are forced to serve a rather cruel and brutal master. Okay, but although how exactly that cruelty and that brutality get conceived can be different, and so as we get into the creation, we'll be devising the master, and so the specific nature of the master's cruelty will become we'll have to kind of develop that. The aim. The aim of the game itself is to kind of tell a story of these minions who are forced to serve this cruel master, but while they are serving the master, the minions are also trying to develop relationships with members of a town. And as they build up those relationships, that can kind of give them the I guess the willingness to rebel against the master. Okay, so you know that there's going to be some resistance going on with the master, and then along with that, kind of the attempts of the minions to establish some type of relationships, and in so doing, there is a love attribute, and you will start off with no love, but in the course of the game, your characters will accumulate love. Now, the aim of today's specific session is going to be really kind of world and character creation is what we will be into today. And then in the subsequent sessions, we will kind of get into kind of putting those characters into action. The tone of the game, I'll read this from the rule book. It starts with a section called A Fair Warning. And it says, "Dear reader, take warning. Go not incautiously forward into these pages, for they describe a role-playing game about the horrific and dysfunctional ties that bind a monstrous master and his or her minions. It is a game with a not-so-traditional style of play that could well give you the creeps. Now, having weighed this caution, should you proceed with these rules, I think you'll find the most chilling events of your games aren't so much inflicted by the GM upon the players, but rather produced by them to the horror of all." And then it ends, "Will you laugh? If you like that sort of thing," it says. I would say that the tone of the game is a kind of, there's a kind of grimness to the game. Although I think also within that, there can be moments of kind of strange humor that will emerge from that. Okay. And the subject matter of the game, I've kind of already kind of alluded to this, but yeah, I mean, the subject matter just has to do with the kind of struggles of these minions to try to resist the master, and also to try to kind of get other people to kind of realize that the minions are actually human, and have other people in the town kind of realize the humanity that the minions actually harbor inside of themselves. In terms of safety, as with all Gauntlet games, the X card is always available. If you, you know, if there's material that is being introduced that is material that you do not want to be in the game, and you want us to kind of stop and to back up and take a different direction, you can either say X card, you can type up X card in the chat, you can put your arms in front of you to make an X. Any of those is fine, and please do not hesitate to use the X card if there's something that is going on that is going to make the evening not enjoyable for you, because we want to make it safe for everybody and to have a good time and have fun playing the game. We can also define lines and veils. A line would be any subject matter that you do not want brought up in the game, would count as a line. A veil would be subject matter which you're okay with some mentioning of it, but you do not want to have us kind of really delve or drill into that material. So you might say, okay, it's okay to mention the killing of an animal, but if that gets mentioned, we don't want to go into the imagery or a description of that. We just want it mentioned, and then you know, we kind of leave it at a more abstract level. So what I'm going to do is, let me just put this up here again, lines and veils. And I've put that up in the chat. If there's anything that you would like to put down as a line or a veil, if you want to go on and type that in the chat. And if there's not anything right now that you want to put up there, just in the chat, if you'll just say, okay. I would also say about lines and veils, if, once the game starts, if there's something that comes up and you say, oh, we really should veil that, and we should put up a line there, it is okay, to at that point do lines and veils. In other words, just because we're doing this right now does not mean that we cannot, add to lines and veils. We can, at any point, it's appropriate to add to the lines and the veils.
I'm going to drop out just for 1 second and switch devices because the chat is not showing up on the current device I'm on, which sometimes happens. I will be right back.
Robbie, I have a thought
Mm-hmm.
on maybe we can make another tab and put the lines and the veils in the character keeper too.
Yeah, that would be fine. So let me go over. And I actually think in the character keeper, the character keeper is not one that I made, but it has these it has some extra I'm going to just do this in the character keeper. It has, columns B and C are kind of these blank columns, and I'm not really sure why they're blank, but I can just go on and use those. So, and so we'll have, are these showing up in your character keeper? Do you see?
Yeah, I see them.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. And as I say, I remember that there was these kind of blank columns. So that seems like at least right now, seems like a decent place to put that there. And while we're waiting for Pearl, the one possible twist I was thinking of adding to this, the way the rule book is set up, you start off by fleshing out the master and the different qualities of the master. And then at the end of that section, it says about the setting that the default setting, it's a very short little piece on the setting, and it says the default setting is early 19th century Europe. It says little more than a single town and the surrounding rough, hilly wilderness. And it doesn't really say a whole lot more about that. It's just a paragraph.
Yeah, sounds like it's really going for the Bram Stoker, Mary Shelley, Frankenstein kind of vibe.
Yeah, and the examples it uses throughout the rules are often that type of thing. When I was thinking about this, I was like, well, you could obviously put it in different settings that would work and take the game in different directions. And I think it would alter how you would conceive of the master as well. So, for example, I could say, well, maybe we have a setting that would be a contemporary, I don't know, some type of office setting, right? And the master might be some type of cruel, boss or something like that in an office setting. Or, you could set it in, it has the 19th century. I suppose, you could do a Renaissance setting, and the master might be some type of cruel despot or something like that in the Renaissance. So yeah, one thing I wanted to see is that with respect to the setting, I mean, we could just kind of take this in the order that it gives us, or if we want to have a kind of quick little discussion of the setting and whether, I mean, does that 19th century Europe setting sound fine, or do you have other ideas as to what
I
you
think one thing in particular I would like is maybe a modern, like current modern setting, just because I feel like given that this could go dark, I feel like if the setting feels a little bit more removed or fantastical, that it might be easier to like push things a little bit and not worry about it,
right?
veering too much into like current events that
Right.
that actually hurt.
Right.
I think I definitely agree with Walter for all the reasons that he just gave, and then also because I think that not having access to modern technology will help keep gameplay like more creative and focused on simplicity. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if we have cell phones, that complicates everything, and like I think it's easier to come up with interesting tasks that a minion would have to do if you don't have like Uber Eats.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can get behind that line of reasoning.
Okay. And so do we want to at least initially be thinking of this as some type of generic, like 19th century European kind of remote village town? We can define the size of it, but is that good as a kind of just starting point?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the book has a section on it. I don't know if we want to go with. I know I missed a few minutes while I was trying to figure out how to make my laptop cooperate, but
Yeah. I read, a couple sentences when he kind of talks about the setting as this kind of 19th century European setting of like a town surrounded by kind of hills and wilderness. Yeah. So let's go on and do that. And we'll probably kind of dip back into the setting, and it'll probably get like specified a little bit more beyond that. But I guess, as just a kind of idea going forward, we will work with that. Before getting going on, are there any other Pearl? We did. Walter had the idea of adding lines and veils to the character keeper. So on the character keeper right now, I have in columns B and C, I have lines and veils there. If there's anything else you would like to add at this point, feel free to do that. And as I say, at any point we can, revisit lines and veils and add to them if we desire to do that. Okay.
I will add a couple now. There may be one or two that sort of need a smidge of discussion at some point given what the game is, but I'll add them, and then if it needs to be discussed, we can discuss. And
Okay.
not great.
Okay. And are you doing that? Going to do that in the character keeper?
Yes, just started typing.
Okay. All right. Then let me go on, and we'll talk about the master now. So with the master, we can talk about what is called the aspect of the master, and then also the type of master. Okay, I should maybe start off by saying there really is a single attribute that the master has that really has a mechanical weight to it, and that is fear. Okay, so the master is going to have an attribute called fear, and towards the end of our master creation, we will decide what number we want to assign as his fear factor. Okay, and that in terms of dice rolls, that is the one attribute that really comes into play for the master. The aspects. Your master can either be a brain or a beast, Okay. So a brain aspected master is influenced by conversation and acts to influence others via language. It says his pleasures and manner are perhaps veneered with gentility, and more importantly, his personality is colored by a rationalization. Okay. And the rationalization that he makes or she makes is that there's some type of objective good embedded in his or her monstrous endeavors. Okay. But the brain aspected master would obviously be a master that has some type of intellectual focus. Okay. You could imagine like Dr. Frankenstein would be brain aspected. Okay. That he has a kind of intellectual, what he sees as being a worthwhile intellectual medical pursuit that he is after. If the master is beast aspected, the master would be influenced by more physical and primal interactions. So a kind of more driven by pleasures and the senses and things of that sort. And the beast aspected master will try to influence others in physical and more primal ways, possibly by inflicting pain, but I think it also could be by appealing to other senses as well. Okay. So you have the possibility that it could be more intellectual focused master or a kind of more sensual, primal bestial type master. Okay. So that's one thing that we would need to decide. And then the other thing is, it says that there are 4 types of masters. And I'll go on and list those and then explain them briefly. There are feeders, there are breeders, there are collectors, and there are teachers. Okay. So a feeder is all about personal sustenance. A kind of classic feeder type would be a vampire. Okay. That they need, the vampire needs blood. And so, some of the classic vampire types would be feeders. Okay. It could be, a feeder could have some type of monstrous addiction that they have. Okay. Something that they just need for kind of personal sustenance, or there's something to kind of keep them going. Okay. A breeder type master is a maker of life. It says that Victor Frankenstein is a breeder. Okay, so it doesn't need to actually be, some type of sexual breeding, but right, Frankenstein in the sense that he wants to make a monster, right, or he wants to make monsters. Okay, would be a breeder type. Okay. Okay, so the collector is the type of master who has a desire to collect entities or things of some type. Okay, it says that like P.T. Barnum, the circus guy, was a kind of collector type. Okay. Or, somebody who wants to, collect oddities, like maybe, somebody who wants to go around collecting human oddities of various types for some type of collection, would be a collector type. And then finally, you could have a teacher type master who is all about evangelizing their own monstrous and dysfunctional view of the world. Okay. So kind of somebody who's all about kind of thinking that they have some type of important message that they need to communicate to others. It says, one example that it provides of a teacher type would be Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs, if you know that movie. But he kind of sets himself up as a kind of it's kind of odd because right, what Czege says in the rules is that he's a teacher beast aspected type of person. Hannibal Lecter is, because a lot of times I think you would think about teacher would have to be brain aspected, but I guess that's not necessarily the case. So we got to decide brain or beast, and then we have to decide if it's going to be a teacher, a collector, a breeder, or a feeder. And I guess once we're kind of starting to kind of think about that, we should also add some details to it, like exactly, what would this master look like if he or she is a collector? What exactly are they interested in collecting, and maybe a little bit about how they try to go about doing that?
I prefer the brain as far as that particular aspect. I don't know, for some reason it seems like it has more interesting, less. Is everything okay wherever someone is? Is there a plane? That's odd. Nobody else heard that? Okay, anyway.
Yeah, I heard a little sound, but yeah, it's gone now.
In terms of not just having him be sort of a brute, but actually having maybe some more interesting motivations and scenarios, the brain appreciate. That's so weird. Sorry.
That might be the fan on my computer. I'm going to mute for a second and then come back, and you can tell me if the weird sound stops.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the fan on my computer.
Okay.
I have an old clunky computer that the hinge is partly broken, and the one area gets really hot, and the fan is laboring to keep up. So I apologize for that. I'll try to stay muted whenever
it's
I'm
actually
talking.
It's not too bad. It's just like a funny sound, but it's not. I don't find it terribly distracting personally.
Okay.
I have ADD, so I just get distracted easily. Knowing what it is what helps like a lot. Having a noise that I don't recognize coming in and out, I was just like, "What's happening? What?" But now I know, so it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had an idea that occurred to me while Robbie was reading the options that I can throw out as a possibility for our master.
Okay.
So when you were talking about if we're going with brain aspect, and then if we go to the breeder type, I was thinking about something kind of along the lines of the agenda of the Cybermen in Doctor Who, where they're like, we're going to upgrade people into an improved version according to our standards of what it would mean to be upgraded. And so, not necessarily the same type of upgrade as Cybermen, but that idea of and that might fit too if we're 19th century theory of evolution has just kind of come out, and you could have a master that's like, oh, I'm gonna create the next stage of human evolution with people whether they want it or not.
Do you think that would be like a collector or maybe a teacher or a breeder, I guess, even?
Yeah, I was thinking breeder in the sense of he's upgrading people and modifying them.
How about if it's like this kind of like a steampunkish thing where the modifications are adding these mechanical, steampunk like prosthetics to people.
Yeah, and he does point out that as you're getting into the development, that a lot of times these types can kind of get blurred, because like I could imagine if we go with a kind of steampunk upgrade idea, there would be a little element of this that would involve collecting, right? I mean, he would need to probably, in a way, be collecting parts and also collecting, new subjects to kind of try these things out with. But I think ultimately we could say it's still fundamentally a kind of breeder type. This type of master would be involved in kind of creating what he or she thought was like some type of new higher form of life, right? And so there's this kind of creative urge that would be going on. I should also add that part of the creation of the master also has to go into the needs and the wants of the master. A need is what the master would have from the town people. So we have to imagine that the master it's largely an isolated area if we're going with the default setting, but there is a village of some size that we could define that would be close by, and the master lives in proximity to the town, and the master would have some need that they want to extract in some way from the townspeople. And then the master should also have a want, and the want should be tied to an outside group of some sort, not the town, but some other group that would be attached to the want. Let me just read to kind of define that a little bit more. So it says about the want. Yeah, it doesn't really. But I know that he gives an example of a want being, for example, if you had a Dr. Frankenstein type master, maybe the want would be acceptance by the wider medical community, right? That the wider medical community maybe had snubbed the master at some point, and so he really wants to be doing something to kind of get back into their good graces, or to just be acknowledged as the brilliant mind that he is. Okay.
So something I had kind of thought of that was inspired by something that was said in the book as a random comment that I don't think was meant to be interesting to anyone, but was to me, was that one of the things you could have in your little atmospheric town was like a rundown theater.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of got this idea of like, what if all of the lords of the villages and towns or whatever else prided themselves on their entertainment, and our master wanted to have a spectacular theater full of that would take everyone's breath away, which would involve possibly having people who could fly or do other the things that we were talking about with the enhancements.
Mm-hmm.
To people. What if he were trying to create a spectacle in the town's theater, and was trying to create people who could fill roles that would make all the other lords in the neighboring kingdoms or whatever gasp and welcome him into their fold of hoity-toity entertainment enjoying lords.
That's kind of intriguing because then you've got both a kind of, I mean, you have a lot of different kind of focal points then, because there's part of this that's kind of medical engineering focused, right? But then, yeah, you've got also that kind of interesting twist that there would also be this, entertainment focus.
What about this? What if it was like the master prop maker for the theater, and they thought that they should have like been made the new director of the theater, but they got passed over because nobody thought props were worthwhile enough. And they're like, I'll show you all, props are the most important thing.
Does the master have to have like more power than that, or how would he have gotten us to be his minions? Like, with the fear factor, how? I like the idea is I guess what I'm saying. I'm not sure how it works with the mechanic.
Yeah, it does seem to me it does shift the tone, I feel like, in a more lighthearted direction, which, I mean, that's fine if that's the way we want to go with it. And as long as that's sort of compatible with the mechanics. Because,
I like lighthearted. So
I mean, I like lighthearted too, which in some ways makes me nervous about going lighthearted in a dark game, because it's easy for me to slide all the way over into wacky.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be an interesting like mix, though. Like the desires of the master, like their want, right, might seem really weird and off. Like, why would they want? That's not that important, right? But I think the dark part comes from their needs and what they'll do to get those needs, right? Like, they're, are they willing to, like, I don't know, abduct people from town and remove their appendages and attach these steampunk prosthetics or something in their place, right? Or what other things are they willing to do?
Yeah. What if, it crossed my mind, what if the master was somebody who was born into an aristocratic family? So they did come from a position where there would be power or powers of various type, economic power, political power, associated with it. But maybe when growing up, the aristocrat really had a desire to, became obsessed with the theater, and kind of got it into his or her head that, that's where the passion was, right? But maybe he or she just wasn't really good at it, right? I mean, right, tried to do acting, maybe was into set design or whatever, but maybe flopped at it, and is now trying to somehow compensate for it and prove everybody wrong, right? That, you've got this, that the master is convinced that he's a, revolutionary, that he or she is way before his or her time in terms of like imagining what the possibilities are with the theater, and happens to have economic resources and political resources that can be leveraged to develop these kind of bizarre theatrical spectacle ideas.
what I think is cool about that idea is that perhaps some of the minions started off just as people who agreed with him about the theater, who like thought it could be better, who were also really into theater and the town wasn't taking it seriously or whatever else, and who followed him voluntarily originally, and then he like realized he had gone off the deep end, and at that point, like, because he had economic power, he could threaten their livelihoods or their reputations. He could, and now they're sort of stuck working for this guy who maybe did have great ideas, but has like drunk his own Kool-Aid to such an extent that now he's just like the theatrical equivalent of a mad scientist, which sort of solves the problem of how does a guy who works for a theater, economically enhanced or not, have enough power to have a bunch of minions. Like almost like he was almost like a cult leader, you know what I mean? Where like originally he just seems charismatic and like he has a lot of great ideas, and by the time you're like stuck in the bunker with the pile of ammo, you realize perhaps somewhere you went wrong. I don't know if that makes sense, but it just seems like you had a cool idea. I don't know.
So Stentor, Walter, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think we can make this work in this direction.
Yeah, and I think there's probably still like some flexibility to like in the details as we keep going, but I think this is a good foundation.
Okay, and if we're going in this direction, then okay, the want of the master, which is what is tied to an outside group, I guess the want would be acknowledgement from the, from the critics and from those who know the theater, some acknowledgement that the master is truly a visionary and has these great revolutionary ideas that are, kind of pushing the envelope, but how could we have overlooked this person, right? Has such brilliant ideas. Is that?
Yeah, maybe even the other gentry that thought he was wasting his time, that like people of their status in society shouldn't be like working in the theater and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So maybe the other people of whatever the social stratus is, based on wealth and power, who thought that theater was like for the masses and the plebeians, and like we go to the theater to be entertained. We don't work in the theater, and he will show them that he's a genius, and maybe they've been shunning him a bit because he became so obsessed that he started spending all of his time on his theater stuff and not going to balls and other fancy pants things.
I don't want to like derail the theater thing if people are super into that, but actually the ball thing gave me an interesting idea. What if this is like a place where they have balls all the time, and like these prosthetics are supposed to make people better dancers, or I don't know, something like make the best ball as something, or maybe just in addition to the theater. I don't know. I like the idea of like throwing the best ball or something is somehow like the amazing thing. Or maybe dancers, if they're prosthetics. Maybe it's like a ballet. Ooh, what if it's like a ballet with prosthetic limbs?
Well, I'm also wondering if it's like this early Cirque du Soleil idea that he's working, right? That it would be some type of theatrical, spectacular, melding of multiple, different art forms, right? The master has this idea that this is going to combine music and acrobatics and dance, but the kind of prosthetic enhancements are going to be a key part of the mix of all of this stuff that's kind of coming together.
I like that idea a lot. Like maybe each different like fiefdom hosts its own event once a season, and he's going to outdo everyone with the entertainment at his event with this multi-genre thing with all these enhanced people that he's, adding prosthetics to and maybe working to the bone, like not letting them rest. And maybe in addition to even the people, like requiring all kinds of things to be gotten to enhance the sets and you know what I mean? But just because he's gone sort of off the deep end with it, maybe it really is just kind of crazy. Like the things that he wants to do might not even be possible. like the scope of his grand vision would make it really difficult for the minions to actually accomplish what he's trying to get them to accomplish,
Right.
because he's gone that far.
Yeah. So the thing that I'm now trying to nail down is, because my understanding is that the master's a villain, and so that to me says that the master's scheme itself should be something that's bad and deserves to be stopped, not just that the master's doing this thing and he's an asshole boss about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The master's supposed to be something, he's not just doing his thing, but a jerk to the people that work for him, but that the thing he's doing is a bad thing. So that's where I'm trying to nail down what about his scheme to put on
as opposed to
the awesome show is evil.
From what I read, that I thought, and please correct me if I'm wrong, for sure, that the big driving force of the master, and especially the brain, is to win the approval of the outsiders. And that what is horrid about it is sort of more open-ended. Like, as long as the way he accomplishes those ends involves sort of inhumanity and lack of regard. Like if he forces the people who work in his entertainment thing to work like 20 hours at a time and barely feeds them, and is attaching prosthetics to people without anesthesia because it's the Middle Ages or whatever, all of that makes him kind of evil without his end goal being evil in concept.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm trying to clarify, is because not having read the rules, is that enough for him just to be going about it in a jerky way?
Yeah.
Is that enough to make the master?
Well, the rules actually make a distinction between wants, which I think is what we've been talking about, and
Mm-hmm.
needs. So maybe we need to talk about the needs next.
Right. And the need, the need is what the master extracts from the village or the town that the master lives next to. And I wonder if, part of this, I mean, if it's, something like Cirque du Soleil, I would say danger and injury, maybe something that the master would overlook, or kind of just, because I could imagine that some of this would involve, trapeze work, working with heavy equipment that's moving around and things of that sort. And then, I mean, I guess we could also define more the nature of the kind of prosthetic enhancements, and exactly how, what exactly are some of those enhancements? Do they involve some type of mutilation or something like that might be involved in terms of kind of getting these prosthetics?
I mean,
onto the people?
Prototypes are things like vampires and Frankenstein and Hannibal Lecter and Marquis de Sade. So I think there's plenty of room to go dark and horrible on this regard.
Yeah, I think also prosthetics, before there was modern medicine, is inherently going to involve a lot of horrible stuff for whoever's having them attached. But also, as far as damaging the town, resource acquisition, forcing people to work in mines to get metal for props or prosthetics, which means that they can't work and have a livelihood for their family, or maybe the mines themselves are dangerous, or he wants to have a massive fountain watery thing and he siphons off so much of the water that there isn't enough safe drinking water for the town, or he wants the most beautiful dancing squad for his show, so he takes away the daughters of the town. I think there are a lot of ways that he could super horribly abuse the townsfolk in pursuit of these goals. And we just would have to decide, obviously, which ones. But I don't know, maybe it's because I work in the entertainment business. I'm very aware of how even non-evil masters can make your life hell when they want their show a certain way. So, but again, that's just my take.
Yeah, so it sounds like the need, what the master kind of extracts from the town's people. I think that injury, even possibly leading to death, as well as kind of some of the kind of far out ideas that the master has in terms of what kinds of enhancements he wants, and what he puts the townspeople through in order to kind of carry this out. I think that they're, at least for me as a GM, and I would have, as a GM, I have to take these ideas and then kind of, I will take on the role of the master in terms of what the master is asking the minions to do, what the master is ordering the minions to do. I think from my side, I think that there would be some fertile territory that could be drilled into with that.
I didn't get a sense from the book of whether or not it was okay for the needs to be more than one thing. Because in my mind, this makes the needs like people, literally, for being in the show, resources that take away from what the town needs, and then also, I guess, requiring risk / injury. So is it okay for him to have all of those things as needs at the same time?
What it says is needs are understood to be what the master would have from the townspeople, and needs are something that necessarily threaten the townspeople in some way, even if only by representing new ideas. But I think that in our case, it's going to be something more directly that would be threatening the townspeople. And it says the role of the minions to pursue these needs on behalf. Right. It is the role of the minions to pursue these needs on behalf of the master. And that, as a result, positions the minions between the townspeople and the master.
Yeah, I think it said also that it could help define what the minions' roles in the master's household were. So
Correct.
if he needs actresses, there could be one person who's in charge of kidnapping or hoodwinking young women into coming and being dancers. There could be one that's in charge of enforcing the workers in the mines. One that's, you know what I mean? Like,
right. Because the way the game goes is that the minions are usually being sent off on different tasks. So it is. I think the way I read the rules is usually like one character is being sent off to do one thing for the master, another one is being sent off to do another thing, and I think there's part of me that says the way that this is getting defined is kind of interesting, because I think when it comes for when you're devising your own character, your minions could have like different types of things that they are kind of in charge of, or that the master looks to, Stentor's minion to be kind of focused on one particular area of this kind of spectacle that the master is interested in. And, Walter's minion may be involved in, a different type of thing, right? So your characters can kind of, come into contact with each other, but there's a lot of the game when we're going to be kind of shuffling between the different minions who are off doing their different tasks for the master. So Any other reactions right now with the master? Do we want to give the master a name?
I like calling him just the master. I think maybe it seems a little bit funny to me almost, but also I like that it makes him very well defined as different from all the rest of us.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah, the minions would be, what about the outsiders? Like the other.
Well, they should have a name for him.
They could call him the Count.
The
Count something.
Yeah, because there are probably multiple counts, right? It's whatever. If we're counting him as being part of a social stratus that.
Yeah. Right. We can maybe percolate on, what the name of this particular count is. I feel like at this point, just one final thing, and then maybe we'll take a little break, and then we can talk about your minions. Is everybody generally in agreement with the way that the master is being conceived right now? So we've got this kind of count, aristocratic type who has revolutionary ideas for some type of new spectacular theater that involves different forms of media, but is pushing it to the absolute extreme so that it actually comes at some type of cruel, painful cost to the neighboring town, which the master is kind of using to supply his actors and dancers and people wearing prosthetics. Is everybody generally on board with that? Yes?
Yeah.
I am.
Okay.
Denver, are you?
Yeah. And I think it does strike me that this is the type of idea that could be humorous at points, but I think, I would be able to kind of also push this into kind of, if the master is really deluded with these ideas, I think that there can definitely be a lot of kind of dark ideas that would be kind of spawned out of this. The last thing that we need to do with the master is to set values for fear, which is the master's attribute, and also a value for reason. Okay. What the rules provide in terms of this is it says, as a general guideline, a particularly horrific and fearsome master projects a fear of 5 or more, and a weaker master projects a fear of 3 or less. High values for reason relative to fear make for shorter games, and reason greater than fear will increase the incidence of connections responding favorably to emotional overtures from minions. Reason is kind of a, fear is the attribute of the master. The way I kind of read reason is that is the attribute coming from the townspeople, okay, which is kind of opposed to that attribute of the master. I mean, when I was reading that, I was saying, well, okay, so then a medium level game, both of them would be set at 4. And I was wondering, does that sound like just the safe way to go, right? Because it says, okay, 5 or more makes it a really horrific, fearsome master, 3 or less. So I was thinking we would just maybe set them both at 4, and that hopefully that would come out to be a kind of challenging game, but a game where perhaps the minions would eventually have some success.
That was one of a couple of aspects that I had trouble sort of really parsing out, because those stats change based on what happens. And I was like, okay, if we start too low, then it's like maybe we just win really quickly.
Right.
But if we start at 4 and 5 and above is horrific, it takes one scene to suddenly have things be absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer for that. I'm just sort of bringing it up as something that struck me as a little bit hard to parse out how to start when you've never played it before.
Correct. And so, because like, yeah, without having actually seen the mechanics play out in person, it's kind of hard to, yeah. So I'm kind of thinking though, maybe we'll start with it at 4 and see how it goes. And then if we feel like we're really out of whack, we could make, make adjustments. Yeah, and I see, Pearl, you put up there Count Louis Auguste, which sounds.
Oh, that was mine.
Oh, that's.
I was saying I thought it was a good name.
Okay. Oh yeah, I see it. Yeah, Walter, you're right. You did it, and then Pearl was chiming in. Yeah, why don't we go with that? So we'll have Count Louis Auguste, who gets referred to as just simply as the master by the people who serve Count Louis.
Yes, master. Gotta practice my voice, my minion voice.
Yeah, Igor, and all of those those types. Another great minion is Dracula had the sidekick Renfield. I don't know if you call him a sidekick, but Renfield was like this fellow that Dracula would send out to kind of make contacts and stuff like that for him.
He was like hypnotized or mesmerized or something, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think had a fixation on flies, if I recall, at least in some versions was.
I unfortunately vaguely remember that.
Why don't we take a little break right now? We've been going at it for a little over an hour, but I feel like we have the master kind of set up right now. So we'll maybe take about 7 minutes and come back, and then we'll get into the creation of the minions. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So I'll see you back in about 7 minutes.
Okay, I'm back. For what that's worth.
I've just been here the whole time. So,
Okay, well, howdy.
howdy.
My internet is screwed up for another week. I'm so pissed off. I'm using my phone right now. I'm like, my internet service has been down on and off all month, and they were supposed to have fixed it 2 weeks ago. And they kind of did, but then the quality disappeared again. And so I finally got a hold of them after trying to get a hold of them for 3 days. They said, oh yeah, okay, we'll come out and fix it again, but we're overbooked, so it'll be another week before we can even get out there.
Jesus.
Yeah, I'm so pissed off. I'm like really close to like switching internet providers.
I am grateful that on the whole here, the internet is good. It was weird. I was living in Seattle until recently for the past several years. And it's like this big tech hub, you know, and Amazon's there or whatever else. Or Amazon? Yeah, Amazon. And it had like the worst internet of anywhere I've ever lived. Like the options were terrible and expensive, and customer service was like, it just made me want to like blow up the city. Which maybe is a slightly extreme reaction to bad internet, but like not by that much.
Yeah, that sounds like one of those action adventure movies, you know, where like the entire city gets destroyed by like an earthquake or by, you know, a tornado or whatever, and just destroys the whole city. But the premise of that movie is Seattle gets blown up because someone was really upset that their internet didn't work. The story of Seattle.
I'm in an odd place in life where, like, even though I'm very non-violent in real life and have never even hit anyone, in my mind, like, my first reaction when something doesn't work is like, blow up the city, kill them all. And then I'm like, I don't mean that. I don't mean any of that. I don't know what I'm thinking. Like, but
that's what the Mad King Eris said when he was talking about blowing up King's Landing. He was like, I'm just having a bad day, all right? It's a figure of speech.
Right? Sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we need words. We need words that have more impact but aren't violent. Like, I want to be able to say, like, oh, it just makes me want to kill that guy. But, like, I don't actually want to kill that guy. I just want to express the intensity with which I feel he has done wrong. And, like, I don't feel like we have good words. Like,
yeah, right. We need to invent more curse words. We need more profanity, damn it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna run for president. That's gonna be my platform.
More nuance in our profanity. Give us
constant cursing and naps for everyone. That is my platform.
Oh, that sounds good. Wow, it's like a kindergarten full of very nutty children.
See? One vote already. I haven't even launched my campaign yet.
All right. We're going to talk about minions now. So this is going to be your character, and we'll probably be using the character keeper. So you need to each come up with a minion that you will be playing. This would be somebody who is serving the good count. You have 3 numeric stats, okay? One stat starts off easy, and that is love, and you're going to start off with 0 love. But all of your statistics can fluctuate in the course of the game, and love almost assuredly will go up. The other stats that the minions have are self-loathing and weariness. At the beginning of the game, you have 3 points that you will divide between weariness and self-loathing. You can put all 3 points into one of those and leave the other one at 0. Or if you want to give 2 to one and 1 to the other, you can do that. Just to kind of briefly explain what these stats are. It says self-loathing measures how much a minion has come to think that he or she really is a monster. Self-loathing will hinder a minion from resisting the commands of the master, but aid when a minion would commit violence against townspeople, outsiders, or other minions, or otherwise act in ways that create horror among the polite folk. Self-loathing will tend to produce painful and tragic outcomes when a minion makes overtures to connections. Connections would be people, a person or people that you are kind of interested in establishing some type of relationship with. Weariness provides more subtle benefits, it says. But weariness increases the likelihood that a minion will fail and sustain wounds when committing acts of violence. And it hinders resisting the master. But weariness does not have any negative effect on making overtures to connections, which is significant because the master will likely die at the hands of the minion who gains the most love from overtures with nice outcomes. What will happen in the course of the game is your minion will have opportunities to pursue a connection, to try to establish some relationship with, usually I think it would be a member of the town. And with some success in those overtures, you will build up love. And the more love you build up, the more equipped your minion is able to start resisting the master effectively. Okay. So you have those 3 points that you can divide up however you see fit between weariness and self-loathing. The other things that you need to do is you need to create 2 connections, each of which creates an NPC from town and describes how the minion is connected personally to that character. So you can basically invent a non-player character who lives in the town who your minion is interested in. And it doesn't have to, it could be a romantic interest, but it does not necessarily need to be a romantic interest. Okay. And it says the relationships are understood to be unrequited at the start of play, or they are otherwise just outside the awareness of the NPCs. So like, the NPC will start off the game, your minion will be interested in them and establishing some type of relationship with them, but they are either going to be unaware of that, or if they are aware of it at the beginning of the game, they will not be, requiting your interest in them. Okay. It says it is understood that a minion is somehow emotionally tethered to, It gives an example of what a relationship might be. It says, for example, a Frankenstein monster minion might have a connection like, my hands are those of the deceased carpenter whose widow lives in town. And therefore the minion feels some type of emotional connection to the widow. Or it gives another example. Another minion might have a connection like, I love the little girl who plays ball in the cemetery. So and that one seems to be a kind of innocent, connection, right? It's just like, oh, there's this girl who plays ball in the cemetery, and the minion is interested in establishing perhaps some type of friendship with somebody in the town. Okay. So you need to try to come up with 2 people in the town that your minion would be interested in, establishing some type of relationship with. And then the final thing you need to do for your minion is this is a section called More and Less Than Human. It says, a defining characteristic of minions is that their nature is, on the one hand, very much greater than that of normal humans, and on the other, very much less. A minion's unique manifestation of this dualism is described by two statements. So you need to come up with two statements. One statement would be a less than human statement. A less than human, the less than human should describe an excessive crippling limitation qualified by a very narrow except or unless condition. And I'll give you examples, okay? For example, my minion is mute except when singing hymns. Okay, so like muteness as a kind of debilitating condition, but there's this narrow sliver where the minion is not mute, right, when singing hymns. Or another example, my minion walks with an uncontrollable limp, moving slowly and awkwardly, except when swinging from the ropes and rafters of the belfry. I think that's like a Hunchback of Notre Dame reference there, right? That Quasimodo, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, when he's like swinging around the rafters of the belfry, he's quite adept, but otherwise he has this kind of uncontrollable limp that makes him very awkward. And then one other example, my minion will transform into a stone every evening unless fed by a child that day. Okay, so it'd be kind of debilitating to have to turn into stone every evening, but there's this little sliver, right, where if the minion had been, fed by a child, that debilitating condition doesn't happen. Okay, so you have one statement where there's something really limiting about your minion, but there's an except or unless condition attached to it. And then there's also a statement that does the flip side, where you get some more than human ability, which describes a powerful and surreal ability that is very successful and impressive, but there also needs to be an except or unless condition attached there. So examples would be, my minion is powerfully truthful and persuasive, except between midnight and 2 a.m. Like there's, for some reason, this, period of time when that exceptional ability does not come into play. Or my minion can heal the sick with the power of his mind, except not animals. Okay. So I think the assigning of those 3 points, I think, is the easy part. The hard part is, defining the connections, the two connections that you have, and then those two statements. And I guess you need to be, given how the master has been defined, I think, you need to be conceiving of your minion in terms of like, okay, what is this minion's connection to the master? What are the kinds of things that the master would tend to be wanting from this minion, right? I mean, the master is going to be asking your character to be going out and doing various things. So, is your character, involved with outfitting prosthetics onto townspeople, or is your character, somebody who is in charge of the dangerous stunts, right? You're kind of the stunt operator. And so you have, the master is kind of ordering you and pushing you to do more and more spectacular, but also more dangerous stunts. I think there are a lot of possibilities, right, in terms of the master who has this idea for some type of super spectacular show that involves acrobatics, dancing, etc. Right? I mean, would obviously need to have people kind of in charge of different things, or would be asking people to be doing different things and helping to kind of assemble what is needed for this show. So I'll let you, chew over that, and you can, kind of work on the character keeper. And let me know if you have any questions, or if you want to, just throw ideas out to the group.
So I'm starting to get this like outline of a minion concept. So I'm imagining a minion who is horribly disfigured. He is like, well, first of all, I should say that I'm kind of intrigued by these like fantastical kind of examples that they give, such as turning to stone in the evening, or healing the sick with the power of your mind. And so I'm kind of going to lean in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking of a minion who's like horribly disfigured, and maybe has these like bat-like wings coming out of his back.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking for a more than human, he can actually fly, except when it's raining. And for a less than human, I think I don't quite like this, but the one I immediately thought of was that like he can't speak; he can only emit squawks and screeches, maybe except in some circumstance that I haven't thought of yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the less than human, I want to come up with something else, though. Not sure what. What do you think of that? As a start?
I like the flying bit. So and are the wings there because these are prosthetic attachments?
I think he was just born like a monstrosity, and then I think the Count sort of took him in as like a useful minion. I don't think they're prosthetics, although maybe there are. Maybe prosthetics have been added as well, or maybe they will be during the game. Even I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think this is just like he's just like this like freakish creature. Well, freakish human.
I like it, and I had written in my less than human something having to do with deformity that I was less happy with. So I think I might take that out of mine and do a modified version of your speech one for my less than human, if you're not going to use it.
Yeah, please. I think I'd like something else. I don't know what yet, but something will come to me.
Yeah, Pearl,
So-
your other one is intriguing. I like that does not feel pain unless she's inflicting pain on someone else, and then she feels what they feel.
Yeah, kind of signing up for horrible things to happen. But it seems
Wow,
like an
that's
interesting
really
mechanic.
cool.
Yeah.
I love that, Pearl. That's great. I didn't realize you were already writing things in.
Oh my god, my keyboard's
Oh,
like
you
all
already
over
have
the place.
names? Okay.
Yeah,
Wow, you guys are so ahead of
names,
me. I'm like
connections.
not
I
even
have all
started
my
yet.
people in. I added the count just for fun.
Yeah, since both of you are going with kind of like deformed and monstrous kind of things, I think I'm going to go the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
And my minion is like unnaturally beautiful, perhaps as a result of a lot of plastic surgery by the Count
Mm-hmm.
to create the ultimate kind of, heartthrob leading actor
And is that going to be the more than human attribute?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good butt for it.
Yeah, something that would cause that
Yeah,
beauty.
some circumstance where it would break down or not, or where the beauty wouldn't come across as beauty, where it would come across as, monstrous or unnatural. So I just got to think about it.
Stentor, one idea would be, what about if it was a public versus private and alone? Like, what if in public, when around people, that your character is extremely attractive and beautiful, right? Except when in a situation where they are alone with somebody else.
See, I was thinking maybe going the opposite direction, having it almost be like an Emperor's New Clothes kind of thing. That as long as everybody else sees me as beautiful, then like it sustains the like collective illusion. But if one person like says something, it like comes crashing down. So I just got to think of the right way to phrase that.
Like an all or nothing mechanic.
Yeah. That like if one person breaks the illusion by, making some sort of a negative comment about my appearance, then everybody else is like, oh yeah, because it's like, because then suddenly I look like too far, right? Like,
that's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And
I
it's
just gotta
something
think
the
the right way to
master could hold over your head if he knows that.
Yeah, because
Like,
the master
at
can
any
break the
time.
spell as well as anyone else.
Yeah, mention it in front of a crowd, and you'd be revealed.
Yeah, Pearl, I like your connections. Those are
Thank you.
rich.
Okay, this is totally weird, but I have an idea that I'm kind of interested in, which is that my minion will emit a horrific stench unless he's drunk.
Okay.
I could see that being very problematic for you in terms of the master not wanting you to be drunk so that you can carry out your duties, but also not wanting to deal with your stench. I'll be interested to see how that plays out if you go with that.
Yeah, maybe being drunk is like not narrow enough. Like well, no, I mean it seems to be
that is pretty narrow, I think.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, and then I have to be narrow. Then I have to be like. Then I'll just be like drunk all the time, and I'll be like this like drunken like Birdman flying around all the time, bumping into things.
It could be like the more drunk you are, the less your stench is, so that you could balance. Like you could get tipsy and be kind of like stinky. And if you drink, it goes away.
And if you get really, really drunk, do you actually smell pretty good?
I think I just don't smell like much of anything at that point. I don't know. Wow, that's like the more I think of it, like I'm not sure I want to play that character. That's actually like really horrible to have somebody play a character that just smells horrific all the time. Oh my god. Well, what the hell? Why not? I mean, when else am I going to play a character that that is like that? All right.
I like the idea that if you're super drunk, you smell awesome.
Well, yeah. I mean, I probably
But, like-
smell like wine if I drink enough, right?
I mean, I
all
was
right.
thinking like opposite direction. I'm cut out for a second, so I missed. But I think Robbie was starting to say like, "Do you smell good if you're drunk?" And I'm like, what if the drunker you get, like past a certain point, you start actively smelling good, like appealing. People want to be around you because you smell so good, but you have to be like wasted to get to
You
that
smell
point.
like port wine, and you can
Well,
hardly
yeah.
stand, sir.
I was imagining like roses and pheromone goodness, but port wine works too.
That just seems like the logical thing I would smell like if I was super drunk.
Well, I guess I was thinking more of a supernatural element. Like you would also smell like port wine because you would have drunk so much port wine. But that like if you smell really bad for a supernatural reason, is there like a supernatural compliment on the other end? Like maybe your smell becomes irresistible if you're drunk enough. But then your behavior would kind of throw off the irresistibility.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, the drunkenness and the smell, yeah, kind of working at cross purposes with each other. Walter,
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be a less than, so I don't think it's supposed to turn into a like better than human at any point. But
Walter, do you want me to? Are you able to type up in there, or do you want somebody else to type in the
I
character?
am, but yeah, I'm just getting started. I'll start typing it in.
Okay. Yeah, and so these all sound really rich to me, and also then give some thought to your connections. I really think the only one thing that would be helpful to me, kind of thinking about our next session, would be just a brief idea of what with respect to your minion. What does the Count usually look to you for? In other words, when the minion when the Count gives you an order, what kinds of objectives does he usually have in mind?
Well, I would think he takes advantage of my flight.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of under the impression, looking over the book, that maybe each minion sort of has a role
Mm-hmm. Right.
in the manor or castle or whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
And so we could think of possible like actual jobs or roles that are our primary, that would define our primary duties. So, one of us could be someone who runs the mines. One of us could be someone who recruits talent, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to call it. I don't know who would be what, and we can certainly all talk about it. But that was at least a slight impression, was kind of like having roles within the master's abode.
Right. Well, and it should be, I think, related to the kind of wants and needs of the master as well. Like, I mean, that right, the master is looking to the minions to assist in satisfying wants and needs that he has. So, I mean, I think that the way this is set up, it could also be definitely, a minion that the master may be using some of the minions specifically for the big productions that he's interested in putting together.
I would have mentioned that Handsome Hal might be one of those, in the production with his, unless revoked by someone, captivating beauty.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also makes the less than human mechanic more interesting too, because if he can't show sadness, anger, or any other emotion unless nobody's looking, how does he play a character? if you can't show negative emotions, it could be a good place for conflict to come in. You want the handsomest guy in town as your lead, but he can't ever look sad. That would frustrate our master, I imagine, a great deal. I was kind of trying to think of myself as someone who might be the one who recruits, like the dancers, but it almost seems, well, no, I guess if Ekek, is that how you want to say it, Walter? Ekek?
Yes, Ekek.
Ekek. I was gonna say if he had like a mechanic where if he got drunk enough he could smell amazing, maybe he could use that to lure the young ladies to the castle. But if that isn't in place, then perhaps.
Well, I mean, aside from the stench, Ekek like looks monstrous as well. So I don't
but he
think
could
Ekek
just pick them up and carry them. Like,
oh yeah, okay. Well, that's different from luring. That's called abducting. But
yes. I guess I thought like keeping a coat over the wings and like emitting his drunken, intoxicating scent, and then once they get outside, being like "Waha!" and like scooping them up. But I can go back to think. I was thinking originally that maybe that would be my thing, because I am imagining my character as being kind of small and hunched over and unthreatening looking. Like, I didn't write in disfigured. I'd change that for the vocal thing. But it is in one of my connections that Rosalind is the blind woman is one of my connections, because I like that I don't have to be aware that someone can see how like deformed I am from years of being abused by the master. And so possibly it would be easier for me to approach young women in the town, because I would be very non-threatening. Is this like hunched over little thing that can barely speak in complete sentences? Which, like, gross. I don't want to lure young women away to be forced to dance all day long, but I mean, that's the game. So, does that seem like a good role for Bupu, maybe?
So Bupu is a recruitment thing?
Yeah, so he wants, right, like he wants the most beautiful women in town to be the dancers, and obviously he's got the most handsome man, maybe. But she looks for people who would be good for various roles in the production, is my guess, that she goes out into the town.
Yes.
And sort of unobtrusively in like some little cloak that, you know, she's hunched over and kind of scuttles around, tries to find the people that she's in charge of finding the people and telling the master about them. And then he maybe instructs her or someone else to capture them. I don't know how exactly that mechanic will work. I'll talk about how he gets people to
correct
be in the thing, but she's like a scout who uses her small ugliness to go unnoticed most places, because I don't know. I've heard from women older than myself that there's like past a certain age you become invisible in society just by being a woman who is older, which is really depressing. But I think it's true to some degree, and I've noticed even just being in my 30s the difference in like people literally noticing you as you walk down the aisle in the supermarket. Like the less traditionally appealing you are, the less people take notice of you, unless you do have some, you know, like giant wings or something, right? But I think as a woman, a lot of times value is placed on youth and beauty, and so like a little deformed woman in like a burlap sack coat, I think she can just scuttle around, and no one really takes notice of her other than maybe grunt at her if she bumps into them or something, or they get in the way, but or she gets in their way.
Stentor, you have, I see Plain Pete up there. Now Plain Pete would start out at 0 love for Handsome Hal. I'm kind of curious as to, you know, how it starts out at 0 love, and why Handsome Hal is then interested in winning the love from, and love is kind of can be conceived in different ways. I mean, could just have to do with some type of acknowledgement. This one's kind of intriguing because it could be some type of family brotherly affection, but I guess since it starts off at 0.
That's the direction I was going with it. That we're twin brothers, and we had kind of a falling out when the Count started recruiting people, and I went along with it. I was all excited to get beautified by the Count's procedures, and Pete was not into that, and has kind of disowned me over this whole thing. And so then, I want to rebuild that relationship and, have a brother again.
Yeah, that sounds interesting to me. Yeah, I like the kind of family angle on that one.
So I had an idea that I'm not sure if it'll work because it's not quite a townsperson. Yeah, I guess it won't really work. I was thinking like one of my connections might be actually a family member of Count Louis Auguste, but it sounds like they want someone who's well, they're supposed to be single, right? Like, I think that was one of the things the rules said. So that I think that breaks like a couple of the ideas. So I'll go on that.
Not necessarily. I mean, I could imagine that it could be a family member. I mean, maybe maybe an illegitimate child that's in the family and who therefore has kind of lost.
Oh, that's interesting. An like the bastard son of the Count, who's like just lives in town.
Yeah,
that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, because the master, I think that the rule is that they can never be currently married, but they could be engaged, they could be widowed, or but the master right now is single. But I mean, or it could just be that the Count had some affair, and this is some unacknowledged son or daughter of the Count who now is just kind of living in the town.
Yeah, I think they're a baker, and they also happen to be the bastard son. Illegitimate son of the Count. So I also had an idea that like a breeder of carrier pigeons would be an interesting person, but I'm not sure if like a small town would necessarily have someone who breeds carrier pigeons. It seems like that might be something more for.
And I think we could conceive of this as not necessarily a small town. I mean, I think it maybe not a big city, but I think it could be a decent sized town.
And I guess the breeder of carrier pigeons could do other things too, but maybe there's just someone who happens to breed carrier pigeons that, that like the Count or other people around use for getting their news around. Yeah, I'm going to go with that.
I mean, that kind of makes sense because I'm imagining maybe a decent sized town, but it's a little isolated. And so the carrier pigeons would have a usefulness to them in terms of kind of carrying messages to the surrounding villages.
So I just need names for my 2 connections, and then I think I'm done.
Okay. And Stentor, with Handsome Hal, what? So we have Bupu as a kind of scout and recruiter for the master. Stentor, do you have an idea of like what role Handsome Hal plays with respect to the master?
Yeah, I'm envisioning Handsome Hal is kind of the face. He's the one that gets sent out to talk to people, and people have problems. It's Hal's job to kind of sweet talk them and smooth things over and make nice with them.
Okay, so kind of
convince people of stuff.
Public relations is that?
Yeah, exactly. Public relations is a good way to summarize it.
Okay. And Walter, what about ECEC? What is the master
ECEC?
usually working? ECEC, yes.
I think ECEC is both like gathers resources because he can like fly and carry at least light things around and move around quickly. And I think ECEC is also like the muscle. Like when the master needs to, inflict some violence, then ECEC's the guy.
Okay. And is ECEC, so is he physically imposing?
Well, I think he's not particularly big. I think he's relatively slight build for a human, but he actually has he's like this Birdman. He's kind of has like an ugly, twisted, not human, not bird-like face, and he's got like talons, and he's got these kind of like bat-like wings. And so in addition to being really like horrific to look at, he's he's got like he can like scratch people up and fly around, and he can like scare the shit out of people and cause a lot of damage. Yeah. He's not like hulking though.
Okay. And do you have ideas about like what the interest is with the breeder of carrier pigeons and with the baker? Like what kind of attention or relationship is ECEC interested in with those two connections?
I mean, I like the carrier pigeons just because this is a person who like cares for birds, right?
Okay.
And treats them really well. And ECEC certainly feels that they have some like affinity toward being like a kind of like a bird monster thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that felt like natural. As for the baker and illegitimate son of Count Louis Auguste, I just chose baker as a random profession to like denote that they're like not really acknowledged as the son of the count, right? Like, but what in particular is it about them? Oh my god! What if? Oh shit! This is hilarious. They take their stale bread and they throw crumbs out the window into the back behind their store, and for ECEC to go and eat.
Yes, make this happen.
That's how
Actually,
you get.
I think I think because it's unrequited, I would change that to say that they just leave like stale bread out behind the shop, and ECEC's just like taken to going and getting it. Like he likes the bread.
Okay.
But he's probably like hidden himself from the baker up to this point.
And does ECEC know that this is the illegitimate son of the count?
I could go either way. Whatever you think would be interesting.
Okay.
Like maybe everybody knows. Maybe the count rails against that horrible ingrate. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, well, I can give some thought, yeah, as to whether ECEC knows, whether the count knows that he has an illegitimate son. Okay, and then Stentor, you're still thinking of one other connection.
For the record, I wrote all of my connections and my everything in like this was my first thought form go to fill out the keeper. So if anybody has any suggestions or things they think aren't going to work well in our mechanic, please let me know, because I just started writing, which is kind of how I roll sometimes. But if something is not good, I will change it.
Those look good.
All right, I got my other connection here.
So somebody who is a reporter or journalist type.
Yeah, she's a visiting Swedish reporter, and so Hal has never been outside of this town in his entire life. So the idea of traveling to a far off place is very enticing to him.
Okay. Yeah, this is all looking good, and I think it certainly is going to give me a lot to kind of work from as I kind of continue to write. One of my jobs is to kind of more fully flesh out the good count and kind of think about like what very specific objectives or missions the count has in mind. And I'll just say a little bit more about like how the game will run. The game kind of oscillates between missions that are basically imposed upon your character by